Welcome to Fantasy Football Aces. It's your boy, William Wolf. I'm back. And today we're going to get into the first week of week 2 waiver wires. We're going to do a little Diamond League recap. We're also going to do a little bit of Fantasy Football Daily recap, my $1,000 lineup that I'm going to place every single week in DraftKings. We're also going to recap a couple other leagues that I'm in that are for a decent amount of money. And we're also going to recap the pick of the week, my sharp pick of the week, 1-0, the Cleveland Browns over the Bengals. I guarantee that on Thursday, if anybody actually tuned into this thing, they would have been 1-0 and came up on some money. I'm giving out one special sharp pick every week, and I'm very sharp. Trust me, the record will speak for itself. Hopefully, I can go on some kind of 17-0 run or something, 18-0 run going into the playoffs where I am most money in the playoffs. Playoffs is my biggest, highest success rate. You're not going to win every bet you make here during the, even if it's sharp. But in the playoff, I'm extremely sharp. With that being said, we're 1-0. We took the Browns. I'm going to recap that. I was in Chicago this past Sunday. That's the only reason why I didn't do I didn't do my Sunday live. I wanted to, but unfortunately in 2023, my first year doing this little podcast / channel on YouTube and the website on the way, the first Sunday I ended up going to Chicago. I'm in the Diamond League, and in the Diamond League, I drafted Justin Fields. I also am a diehard Bears fan, so it was a perfect storm for me to pop up there to watch the Cubs play, and because they're in a pennant race, and then so a Friday, Saturday, Sunday special, Cubs, and then Bears. Went 0-3, so it was a fucking dreadful weekend. I think the only other person that'd be more upset than me is a Jets fan, aka Aaron Rodgers. That was fucking brutal if you're a Jets fan. Couldn't even imagine what that feels like. Actually, I can, because as excited as I was for Derrick Rose in those prime years, he broke my heart by tearing his ACL and MCL. Pretty much was never the same player again after that MVP year. I sound like a homer saying that I think we really could have beat the Heat that year, but with that being said, it's a similar thing. I think there was more hype with the Jets, right? They have an immaculate defense. Garrett Wilson, you saw what he did even without Aaron. I think he would have had a huge year with Aaron. Offensive line is awful, but Aaron wouldn't manage that because that's what elite quarterbacks do. I made a video a little while back saying, stay away from Aaron Rodgers for the exact reason you saw yesterday. The offensive line's bad, and they're going to get in defensive battles. And that's exactly what happened in week 1, a huge defensive battle. Even if Aaron Rodgers played, it would have been a defensive battle. Of course, they would have moved the ball better. Of course, the offense would have looked a little better. But just in those 4 or 5 snaps he had, was it 4 snaps? I mean, you could see the pressure getting on him. It's difficult, man, when your O-line's no good. I believe that this year Aaron Rodgers would have been a game manager. And that would be much better than what we're about to see from the kid, because we've already seen what he can do. And to be honest with you, my analysis on him is that he just tries to make too much of things. He needs to hand the ball off to Breece Hall and Dalvin and look for Garrett, almost force feed him the way Allen does to Diggs, and just take your medicine and punt the ball if you have to, because that defense is not going to give up much all year. I would put the Bills as a top-rated offense in the NFL, and they really struggle to move the ball. But that was a little bit of a tangent. Let's get into the Diamond League first. We'll bring up the monitor here. So in the Diamond League, I'm not sure how well you're going to be able to see this, but this is what we're going to work with here. Fantasy Football Aces. Welcome to Fantasy Football Aces. 1-0, but it was an ugly win, guys. I'm going to click in here. As I said, I went to the game. Justin Fields was very disappointing. I don't blame him. I blame the play calling. I blame the offensive line. And when I say that, I don't mean they weren't blocking, but they were holding quite a bit. A lot of penalties. Justin was forced into second and 20s, first and 20s quite a bit. I'm not exaggerating. Go look at the tape. I think he probably missed a few open guys, but the scheme and the game plan was fucking dreadful. A lot of screen passes. It seemed like Justin was coached up a lot this first week to really emphasize checking the ball down when he goes through his progressions, which is great. That's a pro thing to do. But what makes Mahomes, Justin, Lamar, Josh Allen, these kind of players so special is that we don't want to check shit down, man. Let's go improvise. Let's go scramble. Let's scramble drill. Let's get these people open, just out of improvisation, opposed to just scheming them up, because that's what the Bears are gonna have to do. They're gonna have to rely on scheming up. Bree, stop. I'm live, Bree. Go lay down. They're gonna have to scheme up. So the Bears, I don't place any blame on Justin Fields quite yet. Let's not overreact on Tuesday. After the first week, we need to see 4 or 5 weeks before we make any drastic changes. That kind of brings me into waiver wires, right? We'll get into that, but yeah, it was a pedestrian win this week. I'm not going to focus on the Diamond League as much. When I have a guest every week, I should have a guest Thursday for Thursday Night Football. We'll dive into that more. But today we're going to focus on waiver wires. Now, there's a couple things that I want to teach you when it comes to waiver wires. I got the screen, a little distance away from me here too, so it's a little hard to see, and I apologize for that. I don't even know how it's going to look on your side of things, but we'll learn as we go here. As far as receivers are concerned, running backs, etc., these are the things that you need to consider when it comes to picking them up. You're going to see a ton of videos about waiver wires. Now, I've peeped quite a few. Now, the difference between all of them is very minimal. We all like the same guys. It's not like my Diamond League is going to be able to watch this and be like, oh, it looks like my real name's Billy, but William Billy. It looks like William Billy is going to go after this guy. Right. I mean, we're all going to go after those guys. It's just a matter of what your team needs and how much fab that you want to spend. Let me get my dog real quick. My bad. Bree, come. Come. Man. Not barking at you. We're not barking. Yo. So I'm gonna be live Tuesdays for waivers, Thursdays for Thursday Night Football. We'll try to have a guest every Thursday. And then Sundays, I'll try to have the guest that I'm actually playing that week in this Diamond League that you're looking at on your screen. So that's the game plan. As I said, I missed week 1, but Sunday, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna do the pick of the week, and I'm also gonna do my $1,000 DFS on DraftKings that I'm gonna deploy a $1,000 lineup in there every week. That lineup got smoked this week. I'll read you off like who I picked on my phone here. I'm not gonna show it to you, but it got smoked. But we're gonna have success throughout the season. I promise you that. The pick of the week, my sharp pick of the week, which is what I pride myself in more than DFS. 1-0. But as I said, now getting back to the point, people are going to have all kinds of waiver wire. The problem is I'm away from the screen, so I'm not going to be able to see chats that well, guys. Let me look at this chat real quick though. Yeah, whatever you do, don't get rid of Garrett Wilson, buddy. That's a silly trade offer. Ayuk for Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson's stock goes down tremendously without Aaron Rodgers. I'm not giving out any breaking news there, but you Brandon Ayuk, he's a blow up or miss kind of player, and I know people aren't going to agree with me on that, but here's my logic. I don't put him in the same category as Gabe Davis as far as blowing up or nothing, because Gabe Davis is an absolute ghost in that offense. And it's a kind of a tragedy that Josh Allen really just stares at Stephon Diggs all the time. But Ayuk, there's too many weapons in San Francisco. Debo, Christian, when they get Elijah involved, Kittle when he's healthy. It's just a lot of mouths to feed. Purdy's absolutely fantastic. It looks like he's a match made in heaven for that scheme. He's a better version of Jimmy Garoppolo. But Ayuk, he's not going to have big production for you week in and week out. He's going to disappear in some weeks. And when the problem is with Ayuk is he's not like one of those guys you start and forget. Usually you have a plethora of receivers that you're trying to decide on which guy to start, and then you're doing it based off matchups. And obviously mathematically in the long term, doing it based off of matchups is the smart way to go. But it doesn't always equal results. So guys like Brandon Ayuk, if you do have him, you need to not have other options. You just need to leave him in there in your lineup, and you suffer the consequences. I want to get back to the point about waiver wires. One of the things, like I said, nobody's going to give any breaking news here. I can go into the players. What I like to do for Yahoo specifically. Luckily, I have good eyes, guys. You want to go to transaction trends, and it's a lot easier on the phone. But I'm not even going to do that. So we'll go to week 1 results. I think this is also a really good way to do it. And then just do flex option and filter that. And then you're going to get a bunch of guys here that you're interested in, right? Obviously, we got here. Let me make this easy on myself, guys. I'm going to show it to you on there, but I'm also going to just do it. So I'm going to learn as I go here. I was going to bring my computer up, but this is just as well. Also, I can't show you my home screen because I've already made bids on players, and I can't let any of my league mates see the bids. But essentially, we're going to go here. There's lots of ways to do it. On Yahoo, I like to look at transaction trends. If you're looking at transaction trends every waiver wire Tuesday, you're not going to miss on anybody, because what happens is there's lots of leagues that don't have a waiver wire specific Tuesday, so everybody's a free agent all the time. Those are bottom feeder leagues, but it gives you a chance to see what's going to happen, right? Joshua Kelly, I'm just going to go through these guys and name them. You got Puka Nacua, sorry. You got Gus Edwards, obviously. You got Kendrick Bourne. You got Hayden Hurst, who I did a video on, by the way. You got Justice Hill. You can put that in the same category as Gus Edwards. You got Tutu Atwell. And then you have, I don't want to mispronounce his name, Kerryon Williams for the Rams. For quarterbacks, you can consider Jordan Love, Hunter Henry at tight end position. That pretty much covers the group of guys that are going to be open for free agency, right? And I'm not breaking any news there. You can go search YouTube and you can find a bunch of waiver wire videos, and they're going to give you those same names. I want to give you the thought process behind it. There's lots of really, really good websites that can give you deep analysis on cool things. I'm going to give you one, lineups.com. That lineups.com will give you snap shares. Now, let's see here. I didn't save it on here, or else I would go full screen for you. But just keep that in mind. Lineups.com. Now, lineups.com, you can even search on Google for a specific team and see snap shares. This is huge. You can see specifically you want to pay attention to running backs and receivers. That's obvious. Quarterbacks are always going to be 100%. But I'll give you a great example. I'm not going to click into my team, but my receivers are DeAndre Hopkins, Sky Moore, and then I have a flyer, essentially. I flew out Bateman. Now, I know a lot of people sitting back at home and or fantasy experts, they are dismissing Sky Moore. Most people probably already dismissed him before the season started, hence why he was a very late round pick and he was a $6 ad in salary cap leagues, salary cap drafts. Now, I'm going to push back here a little bit. Travis Kelce, I said this on my Thursday podcast, you would prefer him to have in the lineup when it comes to Kadarius Toney and Sky Moore. It sounds counterintuitive because they get more opportunity, but the opportunity allows the team to focus on them and blanket those guys, right? They're not worried about Noah Gray. So what happens is Gardner Johnson, the Lions safety, who they got from the Saints, who's an absolute stud, who played for the Eagles the year prior, who got them, I think he led the league in picks at one point. He blanketed Sky Moore. He was all over Sky Moore. He guarded him a lot during the game. And I think that's the kind of player that would have went after Travis Kelce more if Travis Kelce was in a lineup. With that being said, the Lions played a ton of zone. There's no excuse for Sky Moore. But here's the upside to this. He ran the most routes on the team, and he had the highest snap share. He had a 67, 68% snap share. Rajon Rice, who was very efficient, was down in the 20s and 30s. Kadarius was down in 20s and 30s. And Valdez Scantling was around the same percentage as Sky Moore. What that tells you is Sky Moore and Kadarius and MVS are going to be the starters. Now, as I said before the season started, Mahomes is going to, if he throws for 4,500 yards, not quite 5,000 last year. Last year was an MVP year. Those yards have to go to people. Now, I was a Juju owner last year in the Diamond. I know what kind of season is in store for Sky Moore. I think Sky Moore is a better version of Juju. But Juju had games like this too. He completely disappeared. People, wrote him off. But here's the thing. When it comes to fantasy football, what you have to understand is you're going to have studs, and then you're going to have guys that fill in. It's all math. Don't look at people for their name. Look at them for what they can provide you on an average on a weekly basis. And remember that each week is super important. So meaning like guys like Gabe Davis, who can score 27 points, high ceiling, but then they suck the other weeks. That 1 week that they blow up, they get you a W in that league in the standings is so huge, because making the playoffs is all that matters. Once you make the playoffs, it's a dice roll. So guys like Sky Moore in a system with Kansas City and Patrick Mahomes running the most routes, having the highest snap share, his time is going to come. Trust me. Kadarius Toney, I would say, it's bizarre. He had 3 drops. He looked awful. But the one thing that I take from that team in that game is I'd be most optimistic about Kadarius, even more than Sky Moore. And I have Sky Moore. I don't have Kadarius. And the reason being is he only had 30-something% snap share, but he missed out on some big plays, specifically that last one he dropped. That could have been a touchdown. He caught the ball in the middle of the field, 18 yards down the field, or dropped the ball 18 yards down the field. That was one of those kind of plays that he could have caught, found the seam, and took it to the crib. And Pat Mahomes is notorious for that. He's going to find these guys. Sky Moore is guaranteed to have at least a couple 100-yard games with a couple touchdowns. It's a matter of time. They really spread the ball around in Kansas City, but that just means your time will come. I think in MVS's case, he's going to have some big games, and he is at a high snap share, essentially the starting X receiver for Kansas City. But he has the lowest upside of the bunch just because he has a small route tree and he's only going deep. He's really only going deep. Sky Moore, much like Puka for the Rams, he runs a lot of underneath routes. He could be a game away from Mahomes just focusing on him and having a huge output. The problem is Mahomes didn't look at him a lot. I watched every snap in that game, as most people did, but I specifically was watching Sky Moore. And like I said, they were in a lot of zones, so he had the opportunity to probably stare him down and or at least keep an eye on him in the corner of his eye and get him the ball. But for whatever reason, he struggled in the second half. I don't think he was seeing the field quite well. He missed Sky Moore on at least 2 or 3 balls that were somewhat catchable, depending on grades. I think PFF ranked them pretty low. But to me, they didn't look catchable. He dropped one, but Gardner Johnson, an immaculate safety, knocked the ball out of his hands. I still wouldn't give up on Sky Moore. I'm not giving up on him, especially not on Tuesday after the week one. I'm not going to overreact on that. I believe in him. I believe he could be a guy that can sit in your wide receiver 3 spot if you're running a 3 receiver flex kind of league, and he could be valuable for you, simply based on his quarterback and the system he's in and getting the opportunity. I still believe he's a talented player, second round pick. I think that Rajon Rice maybe took a step forward on getting more PT, but I think Rajon is more, in my opinion, this is completely subjective. I believe that he's on pace to take more of MBS's snaps. He's a different kind of player than Sky Moore. Justine Ross would be the kind of player that may take away snaps from Sky Moore in the future if Sky Moore, frankly, is just pedestrian the rest of this time. It's tough to evaluate that game without seeing overhead views of tape and seeing the timing and seeing the windows. Essentially, what Pat Mahomes is going to do, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and he will, and Andy Reid will truly know what they missed out there and who actually is getting open and who they can trust, essentially. Now, I went on a huge tangent there, but my point I was trying to make about the waiver wires is there's only probably half the weeks that there's guys out there that are actually worth a damn that you really want to go after. And I would say week one, we have some of those guys. I believe that when it comes to the Ravens situation, you're going to be gambling, but I think it's worth the gamble. If you need a running back to fill in right now, if you built your team and you were wide receiver, you had wide receivers, I have a team like this where I had wide receivers and Travis Kelce and a good quarterback, right? So my running backs were kind of weak. I went after, later guys. I got James Cook late, which he looks good. And then I got a lot of other flyer kind of players like Deion Jackson. I actually have Gus Edwards on my bench, so I get to put him in the lineup now. I also have Jamal Williams for a couple weeks with Kamara out. But the point I'm trying to make is between Kerryon Johnson for the Rams and Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, Kerryon Williams. I don't know if I said Kerryon Johnson. Sorry, I'm thinking of the old Lions running back. Kerryon Williams. I don't really know how to say the dude's name. But he's a sharp player. He fell in the draft because of his speed, but it seems like McVay likes him. It seems like Cam Akers just can't really hold on to that role for whatever reason. I don't see that being much more than a 50-50 split, but I think that if you need a running back, you definitely go after Williams. He has upside at receiving the ball in half-point PPR and PPRs. He ran a lot more routes than Cam Akers. He's going to have more opportunity. He has good hands. And on the other side, the Ravens, you're going to have to deal with them possibly going after Jonathan Taylor right now, even though that's extremely unlikely. They paid Lamar Jackson. They also paid Roquan Smith on defense. So that's less likely, but they could try to get Kareem Hunt for cheap or Leonard Fournette. And even if they do get those guys, it's going to be a timeshare kind of thing. I think Justice Hill and Gus Edwards are equally as valuable when it comes to fab this waiver wire day. I think that you're going to be taking a gamble on either one. I think Gus Edwards is the safer pick. Take Gus Edwards. If you want to go after both, go after both. But I would, if you want the safer guy, I would go after Gus Edwards. I know that Justice got the goal line carries, but I believe that besides Lamar running the ball, I want to say that they're going to give the ball to Gus Edwards down there. He's a big boy and he runs hard. I don't see why he wouldn't be the goal line running back. I don't really know how to explain what happened in week 1. Justice Hill, he could do it all. He's essentially like the Dobbins, a shittier version of Dobbins. None of these 3 guys are that great in my opinion, and that includes Dobbins. But I think that if you need a running back, it's fair to go after either one of those guys. I would, risk 20 to 30% of your fab, maybe on both. That way you guarantee yourself a Ravens back. They have a top 10 offensive line. People are always worried about Lamar. They have good receivers out there now. Zay Flowers looks incredible. So I would love to have a piece of that backfield for the Ravens. It's just tough to predict which guy. I stay away from the Ravens every year when it comes to their backfield until they figure that out. It appeared that they were going to roll with J.K. Dobbins as their horse this year, their dog, but obviously that didn't work out for them. So I think, they're going to call up Melvin Gordon from the practice squad, and I don't know which guy is going to be the guy there. I think they're going to ride a hot hand, and I hate when GMs and coaches say that. We're going to ride the hot hand. I think it's fair in the league, but for fantasy, it sucks, and I wouldn't want any part of that. I would just hate my life if I had to pick which guy I had to start in that lineup. I'm about to be dealing with that in one of my leagues with Deion Jackson and Zach Moss. I know Deion was terrible, but at least I knew he was a starter and I could throw him out there. But when Zach Moss gets involved, it's like you don't know which guy's going to go here. Let me see this chat real quick. I would trade. The question was essentially, he has the Sutton and Judy, and he's asking if you should trade one. He has Devontae Smith as well. Yeah, you should trade either one, Judy or Sutton. I'd do that. I need way more context. I also need to know what you're getting, et cetera, et cetera. But I would get rid of either one of those guys because you're never going to want both. I think that it's a coin toss between both of them, which one does better the rest of the year when Judy's healthy. I know Judy is the more sexy player, quote unquote, but Sutton already got a touchdown. I had Sutton as my, sleeper this year, as far as a guy you can get late who has a lot of upside. I still believe that he had a touchdown. The offense looked dreadful again, which is a bad sign for the Broncos. But I would definitely trade one of them, and I would base that upon what kind of value you're going to get back. So whichever guy gets you more value back, I'd get rid of him and just gamble on the other guy. And you can't be results-oriented. You just have to go with what's best on the table at the time and then live with the results, because it's impossible to really be honest about, and it's impossible to know, like I know, whether Judy or Sutton's going to do better. I would try to move one of them, and whichever one interests people more. I assume Judy might interest people more, especially because they're thinking, oh, when he comes back, he's going to be a monster. Yeah, I mean, I'd probably make that move. Try to get the most you can from those guys. Looks like my dog's going to sit down. Let's see what she's doing. She's my first guest. It's my first guest, Bree, the Doberman. Bree, what do you have anything to say? Huh? Okay. Looks like she doesn't really have anything to say, guys. Sorry to say that. But yeah, I'm gonna. Here, let me go back to here. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about these other guys. So we're going to go down in order. Joshua Kelly. he had a big game. I believe if you need a running back, go after him. If you need a running back, 25% of your fab on him, because it looks like he's going to be in a 50-50 split with Eckler. I think it was a matter of time before this happened to Eckler, but Kelly, he looked good. He played well and he looked good. The offensive line in LA is elite. They have 4 good receivers, really. So teams can't really just stack the box on that team. I think when Kelly's in the game, they even get softer in the box because they're like, oh, Eckler's out, right? And you're an Eckler injury away. Even if he misses 2 games and you have Kelly, you put him in your lineup and then he balls. He balls like a top 10 running back, right? So I would use money on him, and then you just wait until Eckler misses a week or 2. It's pretty common that all running backs in the NFL miss at least 1 game. So in a worst case scenario, you get him in there for a couple weeks and he's a top 12 running back, RB1. And in a really good spot, Eckler gets hurt and you get a league winner. And then in a worst case scenario, he's in a 40% snap share for LA the rest of the time. I wouldn't go crazy for him, but especially after 1 week, because I've seen tons of NFL seasons where week 1 didn't really portray what was going to really happen, especially in backfields and wide receiver rooms. They change pretty quickly. You also don't know what kind of injuries people are all dealing with, so that stuff's really weird and dicey. So, I mean, I would bid on him, but I wouldn't go crazy for Kelly. He looks good, though. Next on the list is Puka Nacua. It's very rare, very, 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 very rare that somebody pops out on the radar like this, and I didn't know about him at all. So when you get 15 targets, you pop on my radar, you pop on everybody's radar. I watched a lot of tape on him today, wanted to see what he was made of. I like his size, 6'2", 200 pounds. Looks like from the tape that I've watched and a lot of videos I've watched, Cooper Kupp has been holding his hand throughout this whole process. So that's kind of what he looked like out there, right? He looked like a little slower Cooper Kupp, but he looked physical. He looked like Kupp, and Stafford was targeting him like he was Kupp. They play San Francisco next week. So it's one of those kind of things that you like, is this fool's gold? The Rams were on my no draft list. I think they have one of the worst offensive lines in the NFL, but they blocked really well this past week against Seattle. Granted, that's not going to be a San Francisco pass rush. San Francisco plays a lot of zone, as does Seattle, so he's going to be able to find seams, essentially, find little spots. And if Stafford's looking for him, he's going to connect with him. We don't know when Cooper Kupp's going to be back. He's on the IR 4 weeks to 8 weeks, I'd say, but we really don't know. 4 weeks is obviously guaranteed being on the IR. I'd say he's more like a 6-week kind of guy out. The thing is, Van Jefferson had 90-something% snap share. And Van Jefferson, for whatever reason, Stafford does not like looking at him. It's kind of like the Valdez-Scantling situation in Kansas City. Like, why are they even on the field? They play the most snaps. They're essentially the X receiver, but they just do not get the ball. And I think it's mostly because they're bad. I think that Stafford, when he looks at them, they're covered, and then he's not looking at them when they actually get open because he's just assuming they're covered because he always lets them, the receiver always lets them down when he's looking for him. That's like my analysis of Valdez-Scantling and Van Jefferson. They're probably in the same tier of wide receivers too. They're starting receivers in the NFL, but they're not producing at all. I think that this Tutu thing, and Puka, I'll say Tutu he's got a ton of talent. He's just a really small guy. But I noticed that what they was doing, it looked like McVay was stealing some plays from the Dolphins. And he was using Tutu in a way that Tyreek Hill is used, sending him in motion and calling hike while he's on the run. So he just fucking explodes on his release, running full speed. I think that Tutu Atwell is a really interesting waiver wire pick this week. Stafford looked great. He looked healthy. If he's great and healthy, I don't see any reason why Tutu can't eat in this offense, even if Cooper Kupp comes back. Tutu essentially was the number 2 receiver. He ran a few more snaps than Puka. He runs a lot deeper routes. He's a speed demon. He's an athlete. Just go check his tape at Louisville. He's twitchy. He's fast. I mean, he's like I don't even want to say a poor man's version of Tyreek, but he's a poor man's version of Tyreek because Tyreek is that dude. So, even though I really respect what Tutu does on the field, and I don't really want to call him a poor man's, I mean, when you compare him to Tyreek Hill, you kind of have to call him a poor man, but that's what he is. And who knows what that translates to, man? They might have found something. I know he's like in his 3rd year, but he kind of looked good last year when everybody got hurt before Stafford went out the door. He was kind of like the bright spot of that offense. I just think that, 8 targets, 6 receptions, 100 and something yards. I think that could be something you rely on. And not only that, he's going to catch bombs for touchdowns, like 60-yard bombs. Like, that's inevitable. Stafford loves to do that. So if you're in a PPR league, I'd go after Puka. And I mean full point PPR. But if you're in standard, you should go after Tutu Atwell, especially if you're in a deep 12-man league with 3 receivers. Because if not, you're most likely not going to need them. And I would just stay away from Rams' receivers in general. I think we're only in week 1. There's going to be plenty of opportunity for guys throughout the year in weeks that people are going to drop too, that you're going to be able to pick up and you're going to wish you'd saved some money for. So I don't know if I would break the bank on Tutu or Puka. 15 targets is quite a bit. And if you're in full point PPR, I'd really consider, putting 20 to 25% on him, depending on how much you like him. I do like his size. I like that he's a rookie. He had a hype in that camp, even though I didn't hear about it because I didn't follow the Rams camp because they were on my no draft list. But maybe he stays on the field when Kupp is healthy and he's the number 2 receiver. Maybe they just abandoned Van Jefferson and they kind of like do a Tutu, Puka, Kupp trio. Now, with that being said, our pedestrian Rams team, in my opinion, it can no way in heck support 3 receivers. So you need to find the hot hand between those guys and ride with one. I don't mind going after Atwell and Puka here in the beginning of the year and seeing what happens and then figuring out which one is really that guy. And then by the time Kupp comes back, you'll really know what's going on. But it's probably worth a shot going after him because he had 15 targets. 15 targets is a lot. And Stafford's notorious for doing this kind of shit. He quite literally stares people down and he obsesses about them. He kind of did that with Calvin Johnson. Rightfully so, right? He did that. He's doing that with Kupp in his career now. And he likes this Puka kid. So, and I think Atwell's not going anywhere, man. He's a premier athlete. That covers that situation. We talked about Gus Edwards, and I'm gonna say this: Kendrick Bourne, stay away from him. That's fool's gold. If you go after Kendrick Bourne, you're making a mistake. He's been in the league for 8 or 9 years. The Patriots receivers, they're the same. They're always like this. You can never predict who's gonna be the guy. Devontae Parker is out. Thompson was out. You got Juju, who's in and out of the lineup. You got Bourne. I don't trust that offense or Mac Jones. I would just stay away from Kendrick Bourne. If you waste money on him, you're making a mistake. Trust me. He's there's no way he has another output like that. He ran the most snaps of his career this week, but he's fool's gold. Stay away. We covered Kerryon Williams for the Rams. Covered Tutu. That pretty much is it, guys. I wouldn't really think about any other guy in the waivers. Now, I'm going to talk about the season here a little bit because today's going to mostly focus on the NFL recap, players, and waiver wires, reaction to what happened in the league, and how I want to emphasize not overreacting on certain things. So we're going to go through the Chiefs-Lions game. We kind of already talked about that, but I'll talk a little bit about the Lions side. Jahmyr Gibbs, he looks absolutely fantastic. The problem is David Montgomery's not going anywhere. There is no way in hell that Jahmyr doesn't get more snaps going forward. But Montgomery's not going anywhere. I would be a little sad if I had Gibbs shares. I'm very lucky that I didn't get him in my big money league, my $2,000 buy-in, and then my other $500 buy-in. I'm very lucky I didn't get him simply based on the fact that Montgomery looks like he's the lead guy, and I don't see that changing. Not this year. They're gonna let ease Jahmyr in. He looks absolutely explosive, but much like all the talk that I had about Bijan Robinson, who we're going to get into later, trust me. And I'll be, frank about things I've been right about so far and wrong about going into the season and all the different talk that I had. But Gibbs kind of was exactly what I said about Bijan. I didn't say these things about Gibbs because I just kind of dismissed Montgomery. And I believed that Jahmyr was going to essentially be at like 60, 65% and Montgomery 30, 35%, but it was flipped. That could change midway through the year. Sometimes that does with rookies, but I believe that the Lions are going to ease him in. It just seems like the kind of thing that they do. They didn't rush Jameson Williams last year after the ACL. I think that Jahmyr still has probably a ways to go when it comes to blocking on third down, blocking in general in the pass scheme. So he's a guy that you're going to leave in your lineup, but I believe he's just kind of a flex guy now. I don't know and I don't want to overreact after 1 week because he looks explosive. I saw some plays. He missed a touchdown too on a cut. He fell down. That would have been a touchdown. So Jahmyr's a great player, but he's not going to be a three-horse dog. He's not going to be the goal line runner. So his value went down to me, and he's still going to be a great flex. I still like Jahmyr Gibbs. Let me see what this chat is. So I already talked about the running backs as far as waivers are concerned, but I'll answer your question real quick. He lost J.K. Dobbins. I would bid. I'd bid probably between $15 and $20 on Gus Edwards. I'd bid $15 to $20 on Justice Hill, and I'd bid $15 to $20 on Williams, as you said. And I would bid probably 30 something dollars on Gainwell. Now, the Gainwell situation sucks because out of all of the things I just told you, you're going to want two of those guys. You're not going to want one. You're going to want two because Gainwell might miss Thursday. He has the rib injury. He didn't practice yesterday or today. I still believe that Swift is the guy in that lineup, in that room. It looks like you have Swift too. Yeah, you have Swift. So, buddy, you need to bid a lot of money on Gainwell. Just solidify yourself in that Philadelphia backfield. I have a fantasy lineup that I solidified myself in the Philly. I have Gainwell and Swift. I drafted the two guys. So, whatever Philadelphia decides to do, which it looks like they're going to run out Gainwell until further notice, you should bid a lot of money on them. I would bid a lot of money on them. And on Thursday against the Vikings, you just start whoever is going to be the starter. If Gainwell is going to come back, then you start Gainwell. If he's not going to come back, then you start Swift on Thursday. I also think that you should get some more depth at running back and go after Gus Edwards and Justice Hill and Kerryon Johnson. You should just bid a little bit on each one of those guys. I need to know more context about the future of your team and if you're going to possibly need a receiver in your room eventually. But I think that it would be really smart to guarantee yourself getting Swift and Gainwell, to have that Swift Gainwell cuff essentially, and then also go after one of those other running backs to give yourself some more depth back there after suffering that Dobbins injury. That last message, it was a big trade. Honestly, it's too many people involved in that trade for me to evaluate. If you stay tuned on here and keep watching, I'll take a closer look at that trade you just asked me about, and I'll give you my opinion. But if you don't mind putting in the message some more context about like your situation, your team, their situation, and what your backups are, essentially, who's going to replace people that you're trading, etc. It's tough to evaluate there, but I'm also just more focused on waivers and reacting to the NFL right now. So let's move on to the Panthers-Falcons. Coincidentally, like I said, I've made videos about Bijan Robinson. And guess what? I was dead fucking right on Bijan Robinson. Dead fucking right on Bijan Robinson. Granted, it's only been 1 week. I fucking told you already. I said that he's not going to be playing on third downs. Rookies don't play on third downs. I don't know how many times I have to tell this. Eventually, I'll get some love in the fantasy football community. Eventually, people are going to respect my opinion. Trust me. But I said Bijan Robinson is not going to be the 3-horse dog that his value is going for. Now, Bijan made one of the sickest plays of the year so far in week 1. That cutback and broken tackle that he had and juked the dude off the catch and scored, that's fucking immaculate. That's the reason why he was a top pick in the NFL draft. That's the reason why the Falcons he's going to be their future. And he looks unbelievable. But that doesn't mean that Tyler Algier is going anywhere. I told you he's not going anywhere. I told you that was going to be a split. I also said when Cordell Patterson comes back, what do you think they're going to do? Just put him in the back? No. Cordell looked great as an Army Swiss knife the last couple of years. They're going to have him involved as well. Bijan eventually I said this too. I said Bijan is probably a number 1 top 12 back this year, RB1. But I said he is overvalued this year as a top 5 pick. You should not invest in a top 5 pick. You should be going after Pollard. You should be going after, I even said, I said Nick Chubb. Those are my top 2. But then, Derrick Henry, who ironically was at 50% snap share, which is bizarre. Christian McCaffrey, who was a fucking dog this past weekend. He did Elijah Mitchell wasn't the thorn that I thought he was going to be in week 1. So we'll stay tuned with that. If Elijah doesn't get more carries in that offense, Christian McCaffrey more than likely is going to be the RB1 this year. Him or Pollard or Chubb, one of those 3 guys. Yes, so back to the Falcons situation. They look identical to last year. Nothing's changed. They got Bijan Robinson, and that's it. That's the only thing that's changed in that offense. Instead of them running out Algier and the other guy that they had last year, besides Patterson, because they had a third guy. The name's not popping into my head, and I don't feel embarrassed about it. Now it's Bijan instead of him. So when Cordell comes back, it's going to be those 3. Bijan's obviously the most talented one of the 3. I'd be a fucking moron not to say so. Obviously, that's true. My thoughts get taken out of context, but he is a unbelievably talented guy in a split in the NFL, and that's exactly what it's going to be this year in his rookie year. He'll have over 1,000 yards probably. He'll still probably have eight touchdowns or more. He's already got 1 on a fucking fantastic play. But yeah, I mean, if you used a top 5 pick on Bijan, I'd be very sad right now. I'd rather have Pollard. I'd rather have Chubb. I'd rather have Christian McCaffrey. Hell, I'd rather have Justin Jefferson or Tyreek Hill. So, yeah, that's my thoughts on that. Panthers are awful. I feel sad and sorry if you drafted anybody on the Panthers. I said do not draft anybody from the Panthers. That was part of my videos. Does that mean Miles Sanders can't have a big year? Yeah, he still could have a good year, but like I said, you're not results oriented, and you don't look back and say I told you so, or oh, fuck, I should have drafted so-and-so on the Panthers. No, you stay away from that whole team, and you just are happy with the result. Hayden Hurst, by the way, he looked good. And I said that would be probably the one Panther besides Miles Sanders that I'd even consider. I don't want any of the receivers. Bengals Browns. Now, this is a big one. Guys, on Thursday, which I'm going on Sunday in the future, this Sunday, I'm going to be giving my hot pick of the week, my sharp pick of the week, my pick that's super highly successful. Last week was the Browns. It's a blowout. 24-3 right here. I told you, Myles Garrett fucking owns Smoking Joe. He owns them. They're like 6-1 against the Bengals. They lock them the fuck up every week. Ward, he doesn't fucking... That Chase shit, he locks that Chase shit up every fucking time. Ward, he's a fucking dog for the Browns. The Browns, he's a dog. Yeah. No pun intended right there. But they always lock them up. My takes from this game is if you have Amari Cooper stock or Elijah Moore stock or Joku, the tight end stock, I'm sorry, because Deshaun, he looks like Cam Newton, like a shittier version of Cam Newton near the end of his career. His arm looks awful. I saw a lot of bad throws. I saw guys in windows and zone, 15, 20 yards of field that Deshaun was missing. He didn't look good. I think that he ran well. He saved his fantasy day by getting that rushing touchdown. If you have Nick Chubb, big days are ahead. He's immaculate. They kept him off the field quite a bit. It was only like 50%, 40-something% snap share, which was kind of bizarre. But they were winning, and he was racking up the carries. They were running the ball a ton, so they let the other guy play forward, and he fumbled earlier in the game. So trust me, they only want Chubb with getting the ball. They're just not going to overwork him on week 1. On the Bengals side of the ball, they're going to bounce back. Don't overreact Tuesday on the Bengals. Joe Burrow, Chase, Higgins, even Mixon, who I'm not a fan of, they'll be fine. Trust me, it's one of those kind of weeks that they played their division rival team who has their number. Like, quite literally has their number. They dial it up and they say, yeah, we're going to lock you the fuck up. And that's what they do every single time. Myles Garrett, he has, I think, a poster of Joe Burrow on his wall that's absolutely been pissed on because he locks him up and he just sacks him. And I don't know if you saw that highlight of him like doing the crossover. And then he came and just went through on the offensive line. Myles Garrett's second to none in the NFL. So, yeah, that's my takeaway from that game. Jaguars, Colts. Anthony Richardson looked good. If you got him for $1 or a couple dollars or a late round pick and snake, you did well because most likely you got a really good team behind him. And I wouldn't mind throwing him out there. I said Michael Pittman Jr. was my number one undervalued player and receiver in this year's fantasy football draft. He did not deny or disappoint me in week one. We're not going to be results oriented after week one. We're going to wait till four or five more weeks before I really put it in your face. But I said Michael Pittman Jr. was my number one undervalued player this year, number one undervalued receiver, and he didn't disappoint. When you're a big boy like that and you're junior, Michael Pittman's son, who you got it in your blood, bro, Richardson's all he has to do is throw it in his vicinity. He's a big boy, man. He's going to come down with the ball. He's like a Michael Evans kind of player. You don't have to be super agile. You don't have to be able to run the best routes in the world. You just need to essentially, run a good, decent route. And if the quarterback has a strong arm, which Richardson does, he could put it in his vicinity. The Colts backfield was pedestrian. Deion Jackson got most of the snaps. I would throw him out there as your flex again next week against Houston. But, keep an eye on Zach Moss. I still think Deion's the more talented player between those two, which is hard to believe after how bad he looked against the Jaguars. But I wouldn't worry about that. As far as the Jaguars are concerned, Calvin Ridley is going to be a top 5 receiver. He looks phenomenal. I mean, I wish I had Ridley stock. I don't. But he looks great. Trevor Lawrence looks like he could be an MVP candidate. He'll be a good fantasy option all year. Zay Jones and Christian Kirk both looked like, good number 2 options. Ingram will be in the mix. Travis Etienne, baller. I put him in my top 10 running backs this year going into the season. I was the only person I saw with me in the top, having him in the top 10 along with Kenneth Walker. And so far, it looks like I'm right about that too. He's a dog. He's a 3-down horse. Nobody on that depth chart is going to compete with him. There was rumors about people stealing snaps from him in that backfield. That's not going to happen. The only thing that's going to stop Travis Etienne from having a fucking huge year is injuries. I love Travis Etienne. If you got Travis Etienne stock, I'm happy for you, man. You're doing well. On to the Bucks and Vikings. I had the Bucks as a no draft list kind of team, but I also had Mike Evans as one of my most undervalued receivers this year. Guess what he already did? Tutty. That's called positive regression, folks. He had a touchdown in his first week. That's what he does, man. He's a big boy like Pittman Jr. I mean, those kind of players. Looks like, he keeps this up. He'll have another 1,000-yard year. He was way undervalued this year. Mike Evans is a baller. Chris Godwin's stock has come down. Rashard White, the running back, he looked bad. But none of that surprises me. I don't expect the Bucks to really keep that up with Baker Mayfield. If I really would only want Evans stock, and that's only because he was undervalued. I wouldn't want Evans at a $20 price or a 4th-round price, but because you could get him later this year in your draft, I wanted that Mike Evans stock because you're stealing a number 1 receiver on a team, a number 1 receiver. Just like Michael Pittman Jr. is a number 1 receiver for his team. You're stealing them late, and that means that you most likely have a baller team outside of that. You have a sick quarterback, a sick tight end, great running backs, etc. So that's the reason. That's the way I like to build my team. So I like Mike Evans stock, but he didn't disappoint. Looks like I was right about that. I called Jordan Addison being, the next Garrett Wilson this year. Not talent-wise, but production-wise. And he didn't disappoint. Had a touchdown in week 1. I wanted to stay away from Madison. That looks like a smart play so far. I don't like Vikings at all. In general, though, I didn't really want any of their stock. I would have took a shot on Addison. Obviously, Justin Jefferson's a beast, but you're spending a top 5 pick on him. So I prefer a running back in the situation. So Justin Jefferson's not on my list. They lost to the Bucks, man. I said before the year the Vikings would be a bad team this year. I said they would regress. They won, like 9 or 10 three-point or less games last year. They won a ton of close games. I don't know if you guys remember the Bills game, but I can go on and on. Almost all their games came down to a field goal last year. I knew they would regress, negative regression, and they so far have lost to the Vikings. I think they're going to lose next week on Thursday here. obviously the Phillies. So they'll start off 0-2. But if you spend your first pick on Justin Jefferson, he didn't disappoint. You know, Kirk Cousins, he had a big game, but if a big game for him is a 22 points in fantasy, that's a pretty low ceiling, man. Good luck with that. You got some bad weeks ahead of you. Titans Saints, DeAndre Hopkins, 13 targets. He's a PPR monster. He's always been a PPR monster. He's a target machine. He's always been a target machine. Everybody was low on him. I got him in the diamond for late. He was really like undervalued in the diamond as far as where I got him. I should have had to pay more money for him. So I got him at a discount, which is lucky for me because I overpaid for a lot of other players. But he's going to be a top 15 receiver this year. You get 13 targets every week. But trust me, you're going to be a top 15 receiver. There's very few receivers that are getting that kind of those targets a game, which is why Puka could be a valuable pickup in waivers. But he's a PPR monster. He's not gonna probably go downfield for a 60-yard touchdown anymore in his career, but he's gonna demand the ball. Ryan Tannehill is always gonna look for him in the clutch. People have to worry about Derrick Henry, so that brings a little pressure off DeAndre. And man, if you got DeAndre, I'd be pretty happy right now. That looked good. Derek had 50% snap share. That was odd. I don't really know what to think of that. I'd say just keep an eye on that. That was strange for him to come down so low on his snap share, especially in a close game against the Saints. Trey Burks, he ran a lot of routes for Tennessee, and he was their highest snap share receiver, but he didn't do anything with it. Hopkins is the only guy you would want on that offense besides Derrick Henry. On the Saints side of the ball, I think they overperformed. I think Derek Carr had a game at home that he overperformed, and they only scored 16 points. So that's not a good sign. Jamal Williams underwhelmed. They're going to need Kamara back. Michael Thomas, the slant king, he had a better than expected game. Olave is their one bright spot. The Saints were on my no draft list, but much like Justin Jefferson, Olave is going to be great this year. So is Justin Jefferson. I don't ever want my thoughts to be taken out of context when I talk about those kind of players. My point is when it comes to Olave and Jefferson and those rounds and those kind of money that you have to allocate in salary cap draft, you could have spent on other players and other positions and other better offenses. That's all I'm saying, especially when it comes to Snake and like in those first two rounds. I want a running back who I can rely on. You can see in the NFL, it's tough to find a 3-horse dog. There's only a few of them. I'm going to probably talk about every one of them here so far, and I've touched on most of them, at least a few of them already, with ETN and Derrick Henry and Christian McCaffrey and Nick Chubb. Even Bijan Robinson I'd rather have than Justin Jefferson, that's just my opinion. That's the way I like to build teams. I think it's a better, smarter way to build your team. But yeah, Olave did well. And then the young kid, Shaheed, he looks fucking explosive. He's looked explosive for 2 years in a row now. My problem with him, and I don't mind you guys going after him, and let me say his name right so you can know who I'm talking about exactly. I'm looking at it on my league right now here. So it's Rashid Shaheed. He looks fucking explosive, and I would consider picking him up in FF. And if you're with your fab, I would spend between $10 and $20 on him. Just realize that he only played 50% of snaps. He's technically behind Michael Thomas and Olave on that depth chart, but I don't know if you guys saw the tape of Derek Carr saying that he was going to hit Shaheed on a streak to win the game, and he hit him on a streak to win the game. He said, "Shaheed, run, I'm going to hit you." He asked the coach for that play, so that's a good sign for Shaheed. He got some rushes too. He's an explosive athlete. I don't mind him. You're probably a Michael Thomas injury away from him being a fucking stud in fantasy on that team. So keep an eye on Shaheed. 49ers, I don't think there's much to talk here about this team. You obviously want stock in all the 49ers. You just have to accept the fact that some weeks is going to be your week and some weeks is going to be one of the other guys' weeks. For example, Ayuk, Debo, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, and Kittle. Those that's a lot of mouths to feed. So every week a different guy's going to eat. Sometimes two guys are going to eat. Sometimes all three are going to eat. But 3 out of 5. But it was Ayuk's week this week. I wouldn't count on that every week. Trust me, I wouldn't, unless Purdy falls in love with him. But I would expect Kittle or Debo to have a big game next week. Maybe Christian falls back a little bit. Ayuk falls back. I don't think. But you want everybody on that team. Steelers were on my no draft list. Nothing's changed there. Najee's awful. Warren's going to be the guy on that running back team for that team. I would try to go after Warren in free agency with your fab. Spend a little bit on him if he's available. I don't think you want anybody on offense for Pittsburgh, regardless of the result. Like I said, we're not going to be results oriented. You just want to stay away from Pittsburgh players. Cardinals, same thing. Identical statement to that I just made about Steelers. I still feel the same way about Cardinals. Obviously, you saw how disappointing Connor was, Hollywood Brown was, all these kind of players on Cardinals. They're terrible. When Kyler Murray comes back, maybe you can throw somebody out there, but everybody was bad and disappointing. Rondale Moore was disappointing. Commanders, if you drafted Robinson, you should be extremely happy right now. Gibson already fumbled, and he looks like they're going to put it like this. If I knew Robinson was going to be the three down horse dog, I would have spent some money on him because he was undervalued this year based upon what we just saw in week 1. You could get him in the later rounds, and you could allocate a small amount of money to getting him, and he's the 3 down horse. He's catching the ball out of the backfield. He had more catches in his first week this year than he did in any other game last year. He's healthy. He didn't get shot this offseason. I think Robinson is an absolute steal in fantasy football this year. If you got Robinson, you hit, man. I didn't draft him. I didn't want anybody on Washington. They were like on my borderline don't draft list. Dotson and Terry, they kind of disappointed, but they'll have good games. Their defense is strong. I mean, like I said, what I take from that game is if you have Robinson stock, you're in for a good big year this year. He's gonna have a solid fantasy football year. Houston Texans, Nico Collins, if he's available out there, you should go after him. He had 10 or 11 targets. He's big and he's fast, man. I haven't watched a ton of tape on him, but I threw on the tape today I rewatched the Texans game against the Ravens just to see, and he impressed me. Nico Collins, it looks like him and Robert Woods are probably going to get the ball evenly. The difference is air yardage. Nico's their downfield guy. Tank Dell, we all know how exciting he is, but he's going to just mix in. I think unless the Texans do something drastic, which I don't think they will, at least not for the first 7 or 8 weeks, or there's an injury, Tank Dell's not going to be playable. I don't know if you're going to be able to keep him in your bench through the bye weeks because eventually you might have to get rid of somebody. He's really exciting, but he's probably a year away. Along with Michi, they have the Alabama young kid Michi as well on their depth chart. But for this year, I'd say for the first 8 or 9 weeks, you're looking at an offense that was top 5 in pace per game. Also, I believe snaps, passing, because they're going to be in a lot of negative game scripts and they're going to have to throw the ball a lot. I think Nico is a guy that you can put in your starting lineup and leave him there. I really do. If he gets 10 targets, 11 targets every game, trust me, there's not a lot of NFL receivers that are getting that kind of volume. Whether they're bad or good targets, Stroud, I got to see more of him, but he can throw the ball. So I'd go after Nico if he's available for you. Pierce, he regressed. I can see that. I already saw that coming. Didn't surprise me. Obviously, we know Dobbins went down. We talked about Gus and Justice Hill. As far as the receivers are concerned, there's something really odd that I want you to know about the Ravens. First of all, when they get Mark Andrews back in the lineup, that offense is going to look dramatically different. Just like Kelsey was out for the Chiefs, it's the same thing with the Ravens. When their true number one receiver is out, even though he's a tight end, it changes the whole dynamic of the offense. So I would take what happened in week one with a grain of salt, but I would also say that Zay Flowers looks like a superstar. So he had a lot of targets. I think 10 targets. That's phenomenal. Lamar Jackson really loves him too. I think he's going to fixate on him a little bit if it's not. So, but the odd thing that I wanted to say about this situation, besides the fact that Andrews didn't play week one, which is going to change the offense dramatically, is that Beckham ran the most routes and had the most snaps. He essentially was their number one receiver, which I found really odd because he didn't have a big game. And then he did the speech after the game. You guys should go look that up. They gave him the speech, and even he said, it was an underwhelming game from him, but he's really happy to be back in the NFL and get a dub, which they got a dub against the Texans, even though it was an ugly win. I think Beckham might be a guy that you should keep an eye on, man. He had 90% snap share or something like that. Look back up, and I think a guy like that, if Lamar focuses on him, he could have some big games. I think that Bateman only had 30% snaps, but I think that they're just easing him back in, so I don't really know what to say about that situation. I would say if you're a Ravens stockholder, even though I gave you my opinion on what you should bid on Gus Edwards and Justice Hill, but I would really only want Zay Flowers or Mark Andrews in this offense and Lamar. And we know Lamar had a really bad game, but he'll bounce back. It sucks that in week one you saw his floor. His floor was quite literally what you just saw, and that's fucking pathetic. You probably lost if you have Lamar. I deployed Lamar in my $1,000 fantasy football DraftKings team this week, and you know what happened to my team with Lamar. So he'll bounce back, though, especially when he gets Mark Andrews. On to the Packers and Bears. I was at that game. I'm going to fly through this a little bit more, but we'll talk about the running backs situation in Chicago. Johnson looked really good. Herbert, he was fine as well. I think that Herbert's still going to be the 70% snap share player on that offense. I believe that Justin Fields will bounce back. I think the play calling in Chicago was terrible, along with really bad penalties. I think that they can clean that up in week 2 against the Bucs, and you could see a huge game from all their playmakers. Jair Alexander, he locked up DJ Moore. He's one of the best corners in the NFL. You can see the Packers probably had a good defensive game plan against the Bears this week. Essentially putting Alexander on Moore, and then just trying to contain the running game of Justin Fields and the running backs for the Bears, Herbert and Johnson and Foreman. They were very successful in doing so. A lot of penalties for the Bears. I was at the game in Chicago, and yeah, it was very disappointing, but they'll bounce back. I really do genuinely believe that. I have lots of Justin Fields stock this year, and I think you just saw his floor, which was 18 points in my league. My league's QB friendly. It was probably more like 14, 15 points in other leagues. If that's his floor, hey, man, you got some big days ahead of you. Trust me. He fumbled too, so that's -2. Threw a pick, -2. But the fumble, I don't expect a lot of fumbles from him. He's a big boy. He's not going to fumble the ball very often. He said sorry to the fans too as well. As far as the Packers are concerned, I would want Aaron Jones stock, and that's about it. I know Dobbs is getting a lot of love here, but trust me, the defensive line for the Bears is the worst in the NFL. They didn't get any pressure on Jordan Love. The offense for the Packers didn't look good. They converted a couple of long third downs because Jordan Love had all day in the pocket to see deep in routes, 12, 15-yard in routes that he will never see against other NFL teams. They had 2 really big passing plays to Aaron Jones on a screen, a crafty screen, and then a V halfback middle route to Jones that he caught on the run and went to the crib. Those are big plays, and that's kind of what the Bears do. I think you need to see a lot more tape on Green Bay before you start thinking that it's going to be a big offense or anything like that. I would want Aaron Jones stock, and I wouldn't want any more stock on that team. And that includes Christian Watson, and I've talked about that in previous videos. Raiders, Broncos. Raiders were on my no draft list. Jacoby Myers, he had a big game, but he got a concussion. I think he's fool's gold. I've seen other experts say that they like him. I don't like him. I would stay away from Jacoby Myers. Devontae Adams. He's a great receiver, but a lot of the reason I stay away from Diggs, or I'm sorry, stay away from all the top receivers in my drafts is because I prefer running backs, and Devontae falls in that same category. He had a slower game because Surtain was jamming him up. One of the best corners in the league locked him up, and I think that's partly why Jacoby Myers had a bigger game. I called Josh Jacobs being overvalued this year and having regression. It looks like I was right about that so far. It's still early. Broncos, Sutton caught a touchdown. Bree, stop. Look at Bree. My first guest, Bree. What do you think about the Broncos? You have anything to say? Bree doesn't have anything to say. But Bree, come here. Sutton caught a touchdown, so he was one of my undervalued receivers this year. I did a video about him. He didn't disappoint so far. I had a touchdown with Judy out. Javonte, they're going to keep easing him in, but he looks better than I thought he would look. I didn't watch. I'm going to be honest. I haven't watched that tape yet. So the Broncos-Raiders game, I don't have a lot of data in my brain because about that game specifically on how players looked. I know the box score, I know the statistics and all, but I don't think I like to see stuff with my own eyes every snap, which I watch games condensed, just the snaps on NFL app. There's a couple other ones you can do that based upon. I think it's very valuable to watch every snap. You can watch a complete game in 20 minutes, guys. So that's a huge thing to do when you want to get a good read on players. Javonte, he'll be good going down, but with Sean Payton in town, I would have expected them to do more. I think that's a really disappointing loss. I haven't paid attention to Denver media, but I'm sure they're really disappointed. That's a bad loss at home against the Raiders. Very bad loss. Eagles, Patriots, that game went like any of us expected. Patriots had a lot of garbage points, in my opinion. I think everything that you're seeing with Bourne and that offense for the Patriots is a little skewed and overblown simply because they were getting blowed out in the beginning of that game. The Eagles offense looked a little disappointing, but on the road in the rain against Bill Belichick, that's about what I expected. The real big takeaway from that game is that Gainwell started instead of Swift, and they scratched Penny. So that's bizarre. I really don't trust anything going on in Philadelphia as far as their backfield's concerned. Who knows what's going to happen Thursday? If Gainwell is out with the rib injury, then, maybe you can take a chance on starting Swift. But I don't know, man. I'd probably just stay away from Swift in general because I think it's a wait and see kind of approach with him. And I feel the same way about Gainwell too. I think this Philly team's getting a little scummy when it comes to like fantasy football. Like these teams, they know what fantasy football, they know how big it is these days. So I think they even find a little enjoyment on what they're doing sometimes on keeping things secrets, especially what Philadelphia is doing. Hey, come here. So I think that I wouldn't trust that backfield until you get some like 4 or 5 weeks of data. I'd stay away from them. As far as the rest of their offense is concerned, they'll have better days. A.J. Brown had a pretty decent day. Devontae Smith caught a touchdown. Gorder, the deep tight end, had a slow game, but that's going to happen. It's just like San Francisco. They have so many mouths to feed that different guys are going to have different good games. Jalen Hurts will have some big games ahead of him. I wouldn't be remotely stressed about him. As far as the New England side of the ball, Ramondre, he went against one of the best defensive lines in the NFL and the Eagles, so it was a tough day for him out there. Big big gains will be ahead for Ramondre. Zeke fumbled, I believe. Ramondre is the 3-horse dog in that team. I would love to have Ramondre stock this year. I just didn't end up getting him. On to the Dolphins. Raheem Mostert, man. Dude, he's been fucking phenomenal the last 2 years, and nobody talks about it. If Jeff Wilson Jr. didn't get traded to the Dolphins, he was on his way to having a big year. He's in an explosive, huge offense. They like to throw the ball way more than they like to run, but that kind of helps Raheem Mostert because they're not expecting it when he gets the ball. He looks fucking great. He got bigger. He put on some muscle and size. He looks like he wants to run a little bit harder this year. Maybe that makes him avoid an injury, but he still has speed. I'd like for them to throw the ball a little bit more, but as long as Jeff Wilson Jr. is out, man, Raheem Mostert is a fucking must-start kind of player. You have to start him. We don't want to talk about Tyreek Hill and Waddle. We know what those guys are. In week 1, with Tua, really impressed me. I've done a video about him being overvalued, and I did a video about staying away from him because of the possible injury. But and I also spoke about him being a shorter quarterback, which can hurt him as far as seeing over the offensive line. But he's proved me wrong in week 1. He was the best quarterback in the NFL in week 1 for fantasy and for real football. So I'd be pretty happy if I had Tua. And, if maybe this league really can't stop Tyreek Hill and Waddle, man, that doesn't actually surprise me. They're phenomenal, specifically Tyreek. Tyreek is the freak. I've called him the best athlete that's ever touched the field in the NFL. The only other guys in my opinion, in his realm are Deion Sanders, Bo Jackson, and this one's gonna surprise you guys, but Devin Hester. So I think that he is unbelievable athlete, and maybe that Dolphins offense is just unstoppable. Maybe it is. I thought that the tape in the NFL would catch up to them a little bit this year. So far, it hasn't. On the Chargers side of the ball, we've talked about Kelly. Looks like Quentin Johnston, the rookie, looks like he's going to be not playing for a while, but do not give up on him. Do not drop him. Wait until like week 8 before you even think about dropping him. Rookie receivers are notorious for coming into the league slowly, specifically first-round picks. So don't give up on Quentin Johnston yet. Somebody will get injured on the Chargers. Trust me. Even in Palmer, I wouldn't rely on him either, even though he played over Quentin Johnston. Eckler is phenomenal. We know that already. Rams, Seahawks, we've talked about this a lot because the Rams, they had such a big game that automatically puts them in a lot of waiver wire talk, right? I think there's a lot of fool's gold over there in LA. A lot of fool's gold. I said, if you need somebody at a certain position, I think it's worth taking a gamble on one of these guys. But they play the San Francisco 49ers next week, so you're going to get a real close look at what was really real against the Seahawks and what was fake. And you want to see 4 or 5 weeks of data, but San Fran is going to be the polar opposite of what Seattle did defensively against the Rams. So I would want to wait and see on that approach there. Looks like Kenneth Walker's banged up, but he still looks good. I'd be happy with having him. The same thing goes for Smith, the young rookie receiver for Seattle. Just like Quentin Johnston, he's going to be eased in. Lockett and DK Metcalf are not going anywhere. So I said Geno Hayes in the Seahawks offense passing-wise would regress this year. It's still Geno Hayes in my opinion. I thought that he balled out way above what he's capable of last year. An outlier year for him. So I'm right about that so far. I still would be really happy to have DK Metcalf. I would still really be happy to have Kenneth Walker the third on that offense. I probably wouldn't want anybody else. Cowboys, Giants. Giants, they got blowed out. It was a avalanche, which means things happened really quickly for them. It got them out of their scheme, got them out of their game script. I would kind of just throw that out the window and not even worry about it and think about it. If you have any Giant stocks, especially Saquon Barkley, Waller will be fine. I think even Isaiah Hodgins will be fine. I just think it was one of those kind of games that was a perfect storm. Once they got a lead. The Cowboys just, you know, lean back and just exploded. Their pass rush was what they do best. And when you don't have to worry about Saquon running the ball, what do you think's going to happen? You're just going to rush the passer like dogs. And just Daniel Jones had a really tough game. It was an avalanche. I would, as far as the Cowboys side of the ball is concerned, Pollard is a superstar. He's probably going to be the RB1 this year between him and Christian McCaffrey and Nick Chubb. As far as what I've seen week one, those are going to be your top three backs in the NFL. Pollard only played half the game, and he scored 22 points, 2 touchdowns. He's fucking phenomenal. There's really nobody behind him on the depth chart. CeeDee Lamb's going to be fine. I wouldn't want anybody else on Dallas's offense. That covers that. And then lastly, the Bills-Jets. Garrett Wilson's stock went down tremendously, but you should never get rid of him. He had a big year last year, even without Aaron Rodgers. So I would expect him to have an up and down year just like he did last year. He'll have some big games against some bad defenses, but when they play good defenses, they're going to shut him down. They're going to concentrate on the run. They're going to try to stop Garrett Wilson. They're going to make somebody else beat them on that offense. And I don't think Lazard is going to be able to beat anybody without Aaron Rodgers. So that's really bad for Garrett Wilson. Defenses are really going to concentrate on him and Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook. So they're not going to worry about, the passing game outside of that. They're just going to be like, hey, beat me with Conklin, beat me with Lazard, beat me with Cobb, beat me with all these scrubs. So if I had Garrett Wilson, I'd be very sad right now. As far as the Buffalo side of the ball goes concerned, they played against the best defense in the NFL, arguably. I would put San Fran in that conversation and Philly in that conversation, but the Jets are arguably the best defense in the NFL. It's a division game. They fucking lock the Bills up every year, just like the Cleveland Browns lock up the Bengals every year. So you take that with a grain of salt with what you saw from Buffalo's side of the ball. Gabe Davis is going to have some big games this year. Josh Allen's going to be phenomenal. Don't worry about Josh. And it looks like James Cook is the solidified RB1. Damian Harris barely got any snaps and carries. And Latavius Murray had a short little stint out there, but that was just because he broke a tackle and got a big first down for them when Josh Allen made that little scramble and threw it to the right. And he kind of got rewarded for that big play, and they left him in a little bit. But James Cooks looks like that dude. He looked great, and that was against an immaculate Jets defense. So I can only imagine when they play some bad defenses what he's going to do. Big games are ahead for him. We didn't really get to see what he's going to do on the goal line. I think that Damian Harris is going to be the goal line running back. But I also think when Damian Harris fails on the goal line throughout the year, James Cook eventually could take that role as well. But James is definitely the third down back outside of like them leaving Damian Harris in there a little bit to give James Cook some rest. And the same thing with Latavius. But it was really just about giving James Cook some rest. It wasn't really about James Cook at all. So looks like he's at 70% snap share, something like that. That hasn't come out yet on lineups, but I'll check that out when it's available. I'm pretty sure it's from my eye and just speculating off what I saw, he was a really high snap share yesterday, maybe over 70%. I'd be surprised if he's in the 60s, but it's possible he's in the high 60s, maybe 68, 69%. But I would be very, very, very happy with having James Cook in my lineup. He's a set it and forget it kind of player at this point now. You don't have to think about it anymore. So if you have James Cook, just put him in your lineup and forget about it. He's going to have some big games this year. He'll have over 1,000 yards. He'll have probably over 7 touchdowns. He'll have probably, I'd say over 40 receptions. So big year from James Cook. That will do it for Waiver Wire Tuesday. We talked a little bit about the diamond. We didn't go into it in detail. I kind of gave you my thought process on the way I do waivers. But for waiver wires, man, you really want to look at tape before you make a decision on players. You want to look at their college tape. You want to look at their target shares for receivers. You want to look at snap counts for running backs and receivers. You want to see, all these different things before you make a bid on a player. And you need to look at the outlook of the whole year. Don't just look at 1 week because this was, if this 1 week happened essentially, and all these players were out there and this was week 8 when this happened, you would have had 1 through 7 weeks of them not doing anything, and then you wouldn't even want any of these players. So you kind of have to think about it that way. This week 1 could be like a lot of fool's gold. You could see a lot of things happen that may not happen again. So I take that, into consideration when you bid. But I went through it. So if you want to check back on the tape and figure it out, what you want to do, I gave my decision. I wouldn't go crazy on any of these free agents this week, but I think there's a bunch of guys that you could definitely go after. That'll do it for y'all. I'll see y'all Thursday for Thursday Night Football. Philly versus Philly versus Minnesota. I'll give you my pick that day. It's not going to be my hot pick of the week, but it will be my sharp pick of the week, but it will be a pick that week. We'll do player sits, start and sits on Thursday. We'll talk about the league. I'm going to have my boy John in here, who's in the Diamond League. We'll shoot the shit. He'll be right here. It'll be essentially my first guest in-house. He's actually the ex-champ, so this is his belt. That'll do it, though, y'all. Peace out, man. Have a good night.